You're listening to History Podcast for Sleep. What medieval Koreans packed for a royal picnic, a gentle journey into royal traditions, delicate dishes, and a long-lost afternoon beneath silk parasols. Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into a world of silk robes, carved jade hairpins, and riverbanks that shimmer beneath lantern-lit skies. Imagine yourself waking not in your cramped city apartment, but in a side chamber of Gyeongbok Palace. It's still dark. The roosters are clearing their throats somewhere beyond the courtyard, and already you can hear the muffled shuffle of slippers on polished stone, steam curls from bath. Clay stoves crackle to life in the servants' wing. Someone is whispering in classical Chinese, and another is snoring loudly behind a paper screen. You sit up on your heated floor mat, rubbing your eyes as the faint scent of pine smoke and sesame oil wraps around you like a familiar blanket. Today is not just any day, it's picnic day. A royal one, which means you're not just responsible for remembering your shoes. You're part of the well-oiled machine tasked with making the King's Day feel effortlessly luxurious. No pressure, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere far-flung Finland, Manila, your laundry closet, post your location and local time in the comments below. Always curious to know who else is sleepwalking through history with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slide the wooden panel aside and step barefoot into a chilled hallway. It smells faintly of ink, rice, glue, and floor polish. A eunuch bows in the corridor, balancing a lacquered tray stacked with rolled scrolls. Perhaps the day's poetry readings or picnic itineraries. Even at this hour, his top knot is immaculate. You, on the other hand, still have straw lines pressed into your cheek at the servants' courtyard. Braziers have already been lit, their smoke curling into the peach-colored sky. Someone stirs a pot of barley porridge with pine nuts, carefully, adding a touch of soy brine from a porcelain jar sealed with beeswax. You peek in. It smells decent, but if it's headed for the Queen Dowager's tray, you better not get caught sampling. Nearby, a maidservant argues gently with a delivery boy about the tardiness of today's lotus root shipment. You see a stack of delicate fans, still wrapped in mulberry paper, ready to be distributed. The king's personal parasol, gold-threaded, and absolutely not to be unfolded indoors, is resting in a cedar box on a velvet cushion, like it's a minor deity. You pass through a kitchen where long wooden tables are stacked with silk-covered picnic boxes so beneath, no wider than a pillow, but packed with exquisite detail. Royal picnics were no casual affair. Every item had to be pre-approved, portioned, and triple-checked to avoid embarrassment or accidental regicide. A spoiled radish could get someone reassigned to plum blossom raking duty for a year. Historical records show that even under King Sejong, menus for outdoor outings were recorded in surprisingly lavish detail. Dried persimmons wrapped in gossamer rice paper, cold pheasant with pickled mugwort, sweet bean paste molded into flower shapes. And yes, historians still argue whether certain sauces were prepared the night before or at the site itself over portable stoves. You're handed a bundle of silk cloth, your outfit for the day. The sleeves flutter like prayer flags as you walk back to your chamber, a hot stone tucked under your arm to keep your hands warm. It's a kind of quiet chaos, a procession of servants, scholars, and stylists, all performing in a slow, elegant ballad outside. The first rays of sun touch the tiled rooftops. A pair of cranes flap noisily into the sky from a pond near the physician's quarters, and you flinch, almost dropping your sleeve bundle. Nature, it seems, did not get the palace memo about whispering before sunrise. One eunuch is already grumbling about the musical ensemble arriving late again. Apparently, The flute player got into a fistfight with the zither guy over the correct pitch of a ceremonial tune. Typical. The fragrance of hyacinth and pine smoke floats on the breeze as the palace slowly wakes around you. Someone drops a wooden bowl and yelps. A monk chants softly from a far corner, his voice blending with the temple bell echoing off the northern gate. By the time you've managed to fumble into your outer robe, tie your sash correctly on the left side, always the left, and pin your topknot without stabbing your scalp. It's full daylight. The courtyard is now a swirl of colors and sound, and you've just remembered you forgot to polish your slippers. Again, but ready or not, the royal picnic awaits. You clutch the bundle of silk napkins like they're sacred scrolls, and make your way toward the storeroom nestled near the western kitchen wing. It's here, behind sliding panels painted with cranes and plum blossoms, that the true magic happens. The royal picnic baskets gamassing are being packed with surgical precision by the king's personal culinary detail. And you, lucky soul, have been invited, assigned to observe the sacred ritual of not messing anything up. Each box is a masterpiece of lacquered wood, deep red, polished to a mirror finish, and lined with padded silk inserts. They're built to survive jostling rides over cobblestone roads and curious squirrels alike. Don't be fooled, they may be picnic baskets, but this is still a Joseon Dynasty court event. Casual is not on the menu. A lady-in-waiting lifts a golden spoon delicately with tongs, wiping it with gauze soaked in flower water. Two eunuchs are locked in a hushed debate over the positioning of the yak with those sticky, honeyed cookies shaped like chrysanthemums. Should they go at the top of the box for visual appeal, or under the fruit section to prevent ants? These are the kinds of decisions that once caused full-on interdepartmental brawls. Well, almost inside the first box, steamed abalone, cold, buckwheat noodles and tangy perilla broth, and a tiny jar of salted shrimp paste. A little container of pickled garlic scapes gets nestled in beside it, wrapped in paper stamped with the kitchen overseer's seal. Even the jars are sealed with knots so intricate that untangling them is basically an IQ test. Fun fact: court records mention that King Yongjo once personally banned pine pollen sweets from all picnics after an outbreak of royal sneezing. To this day, historians still argue whether it was due to a bad batch, or just a personal vendetta against yellow dust. You peek inside a box filled with desserts, and are rewarded with the scent of roasted chestnut cakes, slices of honey rice cake, glistening under light bean flour, and those adorable mini rice balls tied pink, green, and white. You're tempted to check for freshness, but a steward's eyes narrow at you from across the room. Not today. The debate over the pine nut porridge is still raging nearby. One side insists it's a royal tradition. The other side argues it congeals into wallpaper paste by noon. Someone's brought up the last picnic where the porridge turned gelatinous and caused one noblewoman to faint. You pretend not to hear. Moving on, a senior kitchen woman, fearsome auntie, if there ever was, one supervises the folding of embroidered linen napkins. Each one bears a motif: peonies for the queen, cranes for the king, and lotus for the crown. Prince, you get the one with bamboo, which is fine. Bamboo is resilient, like you. At least, that's what you'll tell yourself as the day progresses. Nearby, a box of sauces is carefully arranged, like a chessboard. Soy sauce, sesame oil, vinegar, fish sauce, and that all-important fermented soybean paste, doenjang sealed with beeswax and silk cord. If even one of them leaks onto the Queen Mother's tray, someone will be assigned latrine duty until the next harvest moon. You're handed a tray of brass chopsticks, each wrapped in a scroll of silk. Don't mix them up. The thicker ones are for elders, and the lighter ones for younger royals. Once, a low-ranking officer used the king's chopsticks by accident. He wasn't seen for months. Rumor says he was sent to a monastery in the mountains to reflect on the weight of cutlery. One maid finishes weaving a food mat from rush grass, tucking in flower petals for scent. Another adjusts the royal lunch bell, a gilded instrument that must ring once, and only once, to announce the king's readiness to eat. If it rings twice, may the ancestors help you. A side table has small bottles of singju, a clear rice wine meant to be served in chilled jade cups. You're told not to breathe too close to them. They're for the nobility, and must be free of mortal germs. And like you catch a glimpse of the king's main picnic table, folding lacquered surface about the size of a yoga mat, resting on legs carved with dragon motifs. It's covered with a crimson cloth bearing golden embroidery that probably took 3 nuns 7 months to finish. The tablecloth alone is worth more than your entire house, assuming you had one. There's a quiet sense of performance to the packing process. Every item has a story. That slice of dried persimmon, it was selected from trees grown only at the foot of Mount Joseon. That earthenware jar of radish kimchi, buried in the queen's private courtyard 3 seasons ago, and unearthed precisely last week for peak RIPENESS. And here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some royal picnic baskets included compartments for medicinal herbs, ginseng root wrapped in cotton, dried angelica root, even bare gallbladder powder, just in case someone took cold from the breeze, or needed spiritual rebalancing after too much duck. You step back and watch the final lids slide into place, each tied shut with a silk ribbon, the color of ripened persimmon. The baskets are then loaded onto palanquins, or placed in the hands of extremely serious footmen, who probably took an oath of silence and rice cake abstinence before accepting the job. The sun is rising higher now, gilding the tiles above you. The air is rich with the scent of roasted barley and ink. You feel, for a brief moment, like a character in a scroll painting frozen in a perfect scene of order, elegance, and looming indigestion. You take one final look at the baskets. They're ready, but are you? The baskets are packed, the sun is climbing, and now, joy, it's time to get dressed like you're auditioning for a ceremonial reenactment and a winter survival challenge. At the same time, you head to the dressing chamber, where a polite hurricane of silk, sashes, and fragrant powder swirls around you. Courtmaids dart between noble women, adjusting headdresses and fussing over accessories that would make a modern fashion blogger weep with envy. You are handed your outfit, 5 layers of hanbok, each softer and finer than the last, and each more impossible to put on by yourself than the last. The underrobe clings like warm mist. The mid-layer feels like sliding into cloud, and the outer robe, embroidered with cranes, stitched in silver thread, and heavy enough to make you seriously rethink the idea of walking anywhere today. A stiff collar nearly grazes your jaw. You feel half divine, half immobilized. The colors are assigned by rank. You, not being royalty, are in a subtle celadon blue. The queen gets plum and jade. The crown prince, a warm cinnabar red. The king, golden dragons, obviously, always dragons. Even on his socks. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic, or simply excellent branding. Next up, slippers. They look adorable, silk-lined, gold-threaded, and so uncomfortably tight that you suspect they were designed by someone who thought suffering purified the soul. You shuffle around like an elegant duck, trying not to step on your hem. Outside the window, parasols are unfurling, a swirl of color like spring blossoms in motion. Someone dabs your wrists with perfume, an herbal blend of sandalwood, mugwort, and a hint of pear blossom. It's meant to keep flies away, and, allegedly, evil spirits. You could use help with both. As you step outside, the courtyard is already alive. Robed scholars are adjusting scrolls inside bamboo cases. Musicians tune their instruments, a gaegium here, a piri reed flute there. You catch the faint trill of a bird as a child servant chases it away from the Queen Mother's ceremonial seat cushion. If the bird had landed, probably execution. For the cushion, a senior lady in waiting hands you a small fan and adjusts the angle of your hairpin with the terrifying precision of someone who has clearly done this in the dark. during storms, and while yelling at lazy assistants. Your topknot now gleams with camellia oil. You feel oddly majestic, or maybe just really shiny. As the court prepares to move, you are assigned a very important task, carrying the secondary parasol. It's not the king's, thank goodness, but it's for one of the princesses, which means if you drop it, step on it, or let it tilt even slightly off axis, you're likely to be reassigned to the royal stable's night shift. You grip the pole. It's heavier than it looks, and it smells faintly of cedar and rose oil. Above you, the silken dome of the parasol casts a warm shade, while tassels brush your shoulder like curious butterflies. The gate creaks open with ceremony drum sound. A flute melody begins, and the royal procession begins to form. It's not exactly a walk. It's more of a ceremonial glide. Everyone moves in rhythm, like a living mural. You step forward, parasol angled perfectly, face serene, back on fire. A hush falls as the king appears, robed in gold, flanked by attendants. His expression unreadable. Maybe he's thinking about lotus wine. Maybe he's composing a poem. Maybe his back hurts, too. We'll never know. Following close behind are the queen and crown prince, their robes catching the breeze like soft waves. Pages carry trays, scrolls, and water flasks. One nervous scholar clutches a folded poem so tightly it's already damp with hand sweat. He'll recite it later, trembling, as the king nods very slowly. Or not at all. As you cross through the outer palace gate, the cobblestones crunch beneath your slippers. You pass a pair of guards standing so still, you briefly wonder if they've been painted there. One of them blinks. Okay, still human. Beyond the palace walls, the royal party heads toward the riverbank, where mats will soon be laid out, umbrellas anchored, and food arranged with almost absurd artistry. You notice that a few children from the nearby artisan quarter have climbed trees to peek at the procession. Their eyes go wide at the flash of silks and gleaming hairpins. One of them points and whispers, "That parasol's crooked." It's not. You checked. Twice. You breathe in deeply. The air smells of distant charcoal, cherry blossoms, and the promise of mildly chaotic leisure. A few steps ahead, the king's personal historian is jotting notes. You imagine your name entered in today's royal diary under parasol carrier. Satisfactory. As the group approaches the bank, musicians take their places under a plum tree. You hear the soft flutter of a fan, the chime of a bronze bell, signaling that the picnic has officially begun. A maid unfurls the first mat silk, of course, and bows before smoothing its surface with practiced grace. And then, without warning, a loud sneeze. You freeze. Everyone freezes. It was the Queen Dowager. She sniffs, dabs delicately at her nose with embroidered linen, and sighs. Somewhere, someone whispers, "Did someone bring pine pollen sweets?" Oh no. The Queen Dowager's sneeze echoes like a firecracker over the delicate quiet. For one suspended moment, everyone in the royal party performs a synchronized freeze. The musicians lower their instruments. A lady-in-waiting visibly swallows. Somewhere, in the background, a cicada stops mid-buzz, but then, the Queen Dowager waves a hand and chuckles softly. Crisis averted. You exhale with such force that your parasol wobbles. Nobody notices. Or if they do, they're too relieved to care. And just like that, the rhythm resumes. Silk mats are unrolled in tight grids. Some are so finely stitched they shimmer like wet leaves. Low picnic tables, sobanar set in place, each one matched to its noble's rank. There are special ones for the king and queen. Of course, their legs are carved with phoenixes and dragons, and they sit ever so slightly higher than everyone else's. Naturally, as you help position a mat near the crown princess. A quiet tremor runs through your arms. It's the parasol. You've been holding it for over an hour now. You carefully wedge it upright into a ceremonial holder, disguised as a basket of silk peonies and freedom. Sweet, shaded freedom. Now the food arrives. Footman? in sky blue robes carry the picnic boxes forward like they're sacred relics. Each one is opened in sequence, revealing a series of edible treasures that could double as museum exhibits. Here, sliced fish in lotus leaf boats. There, carved turnip roses resting on chilled jade plates. One box contains yakbab, rice with chestnuts, pine nuts, and jujube slices each, piece arranged with obsessive geometry. Another layer reveals jellyfish salad tossed with vinegar and sesame oil. It glistens unnervingly. You're not sure who eats this willingly, but it's probably someone with 8 titles and a poetry scroll in their sleeve. Your own picnic tray is, naturally, much more modest. Cold barley rice wrapped in lotus leaf, some seasoned greens, a tiny dish of dried anchovies and soy sauce, and duomiya tea, 5-flavor berry infusion. The royalty drink there's chilled in cups made of hollowed-out ice. Yours is in a nice, if slightly chipped, porcelain bowl. You are not complaining. You sit at the edge of the gathering, where the servants dine. The breeze carries the smell of fried sesame cakes and plum wine. You sneak a glance at the royal family. The king sits cross-legged, his expression unreadable, eating slowly and with exactitude. His cup is refilled after every sip by a eunuch, who looks like he hasn't blinked since sunrise. Nearby, a prince pokes at his food and tries to sneak a piece to a passing dog. The dog, possibly aware of court protocol, pretends not to notice and trots away. The queen is smiling faintly, fanning herself. It's hard to tell if she's pleased or just expertly disguising boredom. In Joseon court life, both expressions involve nearly identical fan movements. One noble lady takes a delicate bite of a honey, jujube size in what sounds like spiritual ecstasy. Her neighbor coughs politely, but repeatedly. Someone whispers about food allergies. Someone else whispers back that it's probably just bad conversation. A subtle murmur travels down the picnic rows. The crown prince has requested chunpan for delicacies. A footman rushes off to fetch a small pan and charcoal stove. This isn't unusual. High-ranking royals often liked their food hot. What is unusual is that the footman knocks over a lacquered tray on his way out, gasps. Chopsticks, clatter. A saucer of beak kimchi, white kimchi, delicately fermented without chili, slides off the queen mother's tray and lands with a sad plop on the grass. No one moves. Then, miraculously, the queen mother giggles. "Let it feed the ancestors," she says, waving a hand. Laughter ripples through the court like a small, relieved tide. The tension melts. A eunuch discreetly removes the offending kimchi. You're pretty sure someone's going to hold a cleansing ceremony for that spot later. But for now, the picnic lives on, and now, the performances begin. A trio of Jisang highly educated entertainers step into the space between the mats. Their hair is piled high and fastened with ornamental pins that glint like stars. They move with the measured grace of moonlight. One begins to sing, her voice low and vibrating through your ribcage like warm thunder. The song tells the tale of a fisherman who falls in love with a moon spirit. Everyone listens in reverent silence, except one of the minor court officials, who is very clearly asleep, mouth open, snoring gently. No one wakes him. It's fine. He probably got up earlier than the roosters. After the song, a flautist begins, a gentle tune while children of nobility release cages of crickets into the grass. The idea is to let their songs bless the rice harvest. You personally think it's a nice excuse to chase bugs, which they do laughing, silk sleeves trailing like comet tails. And let's not forget the folding screens, mobile works of art positioned behind royal guests for symbolic backdrops. Pine trees, waves, mountains, cranes. Each one is hand-painted with ink so fine it's said to capture the breath of heaven. You peek behind one and find nothing, just more grass. You're mildly disappointed. Meanwhile, the scent of citron incense wafts through the air. Servants walk quietly between mats with water bowls to rinse guests' fingers. A nobleman pours a bit of maxily milky rice wine into his poem scrolled by mistake. His neighbor leans over and murmurs, "Let the spirits read it." Then, evening is still far off, but the shadows are beginning to stretch. The light turns golden, bouncing off silver dishes and embroidered robes. You lean back, allowing yourself a rare moment of peace. The court is fed. The performances are smooth. The Queen Dowager hasn't sneezed in half an hour. So far, so good. Your parasol duty has been completed. Your arms have returned to their sockets. You've consumed exactly one polite portion of sticky barley rice and half a pickled plum. The sun has climbed high, now filtered through the dancing leaves. Above, casting dappled patterns across silk and satin. Welcome to the peak of the royal picnic, the golden hour of riverside indulgence. At the center of it all sits the royal couple, framed by shimmering parasols and folding screens. Their low tables are a riot of color and precision, one dish shaped like a turtle, another like a mountain range. Their attendants remain frozen in position, only moving when absolutely necessary, like extremely elegant statues with impressive bladder control. To your left, a court noble is attempting to explain to a wide-eyed page boy the metaphorical meaning of a single pickled daikon slice. Something about cyclical impermanence, or possibly toothaches. Hard to say. And then, with the ceremony of a sunrise, the dessert phase begins. Footmen sweep forward, bearing round trays filled with confections, so delicate they might float off if someone sneezed too hard. There are dosic tiny pressed cookies, in geometric patterns, made from ground sesame, pine pollen, yes, it's back, and sweetened rice. There's also yakwa, the fried honey cookies shaped like chrysanthemum blossoms, which are considered lucky unless you eat 4 in a row, and collapse with sugar sweats. The king selects a sliver of persimmon jelly. He chews slowly, nods once. The chef, standing just outside view, exhales like he's just passed a royal exam. A eunuch serves chilled omaya tea to the queen, lifting the jade cup with such solemnity that you briefly wonder if this is a religious rite. Meanwhile, an ambitious noblewoman nearby is attempting to eat her rice cake in the most graceful way possible, biting with exactly 3 front teeth and chewing as though it's a performance art piece. She's being watched by a younger noble who clearly thinks she's overdoing it. They'll probably marry next year, and then you hear it soft, gentle, and unmistakable. The sound of gossip rustling like silk in the wind. It starts with a whisper, behind a fan. Did you see what Lord Kang was wearing? A sigh, a summer robe. In spring, gasps, fan flutters. Someone clutches their pearls, or the Joseon equivalent, probably a jade pendant. Then comes the real scandal, a hushed tale of a poet who left his wife to meditate under a waterfall for 6 months, only to return with a new wife. From the waterfall, someone asks. Basically, comes the reply. No one is quite sure what it means, but it's juicy, and that's all that matters. Somewhere down the line, 2 noble women are speaking in thinly veiled metaphors about the crown prince's future bride. One of them fans herself twice when mentioning her delicate health, and the other takes a pointed sip of plum wine. You don't need a translator to catch the subtext. Someone thinks the future princess is a bit of a fainting couch with legs. And speaking of wine, you catch sight of the royal sommeliers. That's a thing discreetly topping off the noblemen's cups with mac julie, the cloudy rice wine beloved for both its fizz and its deceptively quick buzz. 1 cup is medicinal, 2, festive, 3, historical regret. A scholar sitting nearby begins reciting a poem to a peach tree. Not under the peach tree, to it. The tree appears unmoved, but the Queen Dowager chuckles softly. Even trees get flattered sometimes, she says. People laugh. One maid nearly drops her fan in surprise, and then the hush returns. A light breeze lifts the edge of the tablecloths. You hear the clicking of chopsticks, the distant pluck of a geomungo, and the soft slap of silk slippers on grass. It's the sort of scene court painters try to capture in scrolls, but never quite do justice. 2. Not the colors, not the scent of grilled pear, not the gentle shift of robes, as everyone leans into the languor of the afternoon. And that's when someone, not you, thankfully knocks over a dish of honey-glazed lotus roots. It lands near the king's foot. You see a ripple of tension travel outward, like a dropped pebble into a still pond. Everyone stares. A eunuch's face drains of color. The offender, a very junior court ADS, frozen mid-bow, clearly calculating how long it would take to flee to the mountains. But the king looks down, raises a brow, and reaches with his chopsticks. He lifts a single piece of honeyed lotus, takes a bite, and murmurs, still crisp. Relief breaks over the picnic like a rainstorm. Quiet laughter. A few coughs to mask it. The junior aide might just get to keep his job and his eyebrows. Then someone nearby offers you a sip of makgeolli. You hesitate. Technically, you're still on duty, though no one has told you what exactly your duty is at this point. You nod politely and take the tiniest of sips. It's cold, tart, a little sweet. It hits the back of your throat like a giggle you didn't know you were holding in. From your spot at the edge of the gathering, the scene looks almost unreal. Royalty in repose, nobles whispering, children chasing each other with dragonfly wings, tucked into their sashes. The plum tree shadows lengthen as the sun begins its descent. The musicians shift into a slower rhythm, more lullaby than procession now. You lie back slightly, elbows on a silk cushion, the scent of roasted sesame hanging in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cries. Or maybe it's a palace guard, yawning. You're not sure what time it is, but you're full. The court is content. And for now, there's nothing else to do but enjoy this fleeting, perfect calm. If you're waiting for the sleepy lull of the afternoon to stretch onward into a gentle doze beneath the trees, think again. The royal picnic is entering its next phase. Food may be finished, but digestion, that's tomorrow's problem. Today, the king wants games. And when the king wants games, everyone else wants enthusiasm. First comes Go, or Baduk, that maddeningly meditative board game of black and white stones, territory, and passive-aggressive sighing. A pair of elder scholars unfold a game board, the size of a tea tray, and begin placing the first stones with deliberate, almost mystical precision. Every clack of stone against wood echoes like a proverb. You wander over and observe. One scholar strokes his beard, stares at the board for 10 solid minutes, and then places a stone in the exact same spot he hovered over since the picnic began. His opponent nods, then spends 11 minutes returning the favor. This continues. A child nearby has fallen asleep upright. A noblewoman murmurs, so thrilling, while openly filing her nails. Historians still argue whether Baduk was a test of intellect, or just a highly acceptable way to settle old scholarly rivalries in socially appropriate silence. You're leaning toward passive dueling, but the beard stroking is impressive. Meanwhile, farther down the picnic grounds, archery has begun. Yes, archery. A pair of footmen hurriedly clear a space near the edge of the clearing while a official ties up a canvas backdrop meant to catch stray arrows. It's flapping in the breeze like a very nervous flag. Bows are handed out, arrows distributed, and noblemen step forward with the solemnity of battlefield generals, despite the fact that the targets are painted. Watermelons on sticks. The first shot lands square in a target. Applause. A modest bow. The second, wildly off course, sailing into a bush and alarming a family of birds. The archer coughs, mutters something about wind direction, and retreats hastily. Then the king rises. A hush falls so fast you could hear a persimmon drop. He steps forward, adjusts his robe, and accepts the royal bow, gold-tipped. Naturally. You don't even breathe. The arrow notches, draws back, and releases with a satisfying twang. It lands perfectly dead center in the heart of the painted watermelon. Applause erupts. Some of it is probably even sincere. The queen nods calmly. The crown prince cheers. A eunuch discreetly retrieves the arrow like it's Excalibur. And somewhere in the crowd, the court calligrapher is already sketching a commemorative poem titled something like Fruit, Pierced by Heaven's Arrow. But the real action is just getting started. A gaggle of children begin releasing kites, each one shaped like birds, dragons, or mythical tigers. They soar upward in bursts of color and string. Unfortunately, the wind is more spirited than usual, and one kite spirals directly into a tree, where it remains defiant and crumpled. A young court musician attempts to retrieve it by climbing up the trunk, much to the horror of a group of nobles. What if he falls? One whispers. What if he tears his robe? Says another. Priorities. And then, out of nowhere, a runaway kite cuts across the picnic like a paper missile. It narrowly misses a nobleman's hat, hits a parasol pole, and wraps around the ceremonial tea ladle. All eyes turn. The owner of the kite, an apologetic child with tea-stained sleeves, is dragged away for a quiet talking to by a stern maid who once ended a sandal scandal with just a raised eyebrow. Back near the mats, a group of young nobles has moved on to poetry battles, tossing out couplets and haiku with the energy of a rap battle and the stakes of a philosophy. Final. One particularly dramatic boy finishes his verse with a flourish, only to trip over his own hem and fall directly into a basket of fruit. Laughter erupts. Even the queen smirks behind her fan. You're assigned to help clean up the smashed pears and bruised plums. You manage to save 2 intact apples and slip one into your robe for later. Survival, after all, is about adaptation. Nearby, a nobleman attempts to demonstrate a spinning top trick on a polished tile. It spins for 3 glorious seconds, skids, and shoots directly into someone's rice wine. Splash. Stunned silence. The victim stares into his soaked sleeve and declares, truly, a performance. At least he's handling it better than the Go players, who are now deep in a heated whisper argument over a particularly controversial stone placement. One slams down his teacup and declares that the board is as corrupted as modern poetry. Harsh words in the kingdom of Joseon. Step back, taking it all in. Games, mishaps, poetry, flying objects, this isn't just leisure. It's diplomacy disguised as downtime. Every laugh, every clever line, every precise arrow or graceful misstep is being watched, remembered, retold. It's how power breathes and softens at the edges. And for you, nestled at the periphery of this strange blend of formality and chaos, it's oddly beautiful. You lean back again, this time avoiding the kite strings and spilled wine. The sun is beginning to angle downward, casting golden light across the treetops. Somewhere, a child is still crying about their broken kite. Somewhere else, the calligrapher is asking how to rhyme archery with divine majesty. And you're thinking, next time, bring 2 apples. By now, the sun is sliding westward, dragging its honey-colored rays across the picnic ground like a sleepy child pulling a blanket. Shadows lengthen, robes are loosened, and, as with any large outdoor gathering, the mood slowly shifts from cheerful chaos to something a bit more practical. Because no matter how divine the deserts, how elegant the poetry, or how satisfying the archery, there is one eternal truth. Insects always crash the party. You first notice them hovering near the queen mother's citron water. At first, it's just a polite dragonfly, then a bee with opinions, then a full-scale insect battalion led by the ants. You watch as a court servant armed with a silk fan and an alarming level of focus begins her slow, hypnotic ballet of pest management. The noblemen pretend not to notice. One lifts his teacup and casually shifts it 6 inches to the left. Another raises a brow as an ant boldly explores his napkin. A page boy, less composed, swats a fly with the enthusiasm of a medieval tennis player, only to be gently reprimanded by a maid with a look that says, "We do not swat near the queen." The king, naturally, remains untouched. A subtle cone of sandalwood smoke surrounds his table like a divine bug-repellent aura. You're not saying he's favored by the ancestors, but the mosquitoes sure seem to think so. But insects are only the first challenge. Soon, you notice footmen wheeling in portable privacies. You heard right. Foldable, collapsible royal toilets, screened by embroidered panels, and infused with something that smells suspiciously of pine and desperation. Let's not pretend court life didn't include bodily functions. Historians are still debating the logistics of these travel-friendly toilets. Were they emptied immediately? Was a special attendant in charge of floral ventilation? Did they have an official title, like Assistant Minister of Discreet Relief? One thing's clear, the queue forms quickly. A nobleman excuses himself with a graceful bow and vanishes behind a screen. Seconds later, a younger noble hovers nearby, pretending to admire a bush. You've never seen such tension outside of a game of royal go. Meanwhile, a Biesta one from earlier returns, with vengeance in its tiny wings, and chooses violence. It circles the Queen Dowager's tea, zips past to courtiers, and lands squarely on a candied lotus root. The reaction is instant. One maid screams. A steward flaps wildly. The Queen Dowager, to her credit, simply raises an eyebrow and says, "It appears we have a guest." The bee, unbothered, continues its sugar feast. A physician is summoned. He arrives with 2 assistants, one of whom is carrying a lacquer box filled with antidotes. For a bee, that's how royal things are. You wouldn't be surprised if they had a small parasol for it, too. Eventually, a eunuch traps the bee under a teacup and slides a paper under it, escorting the offender off the premises like an unwanted poet. And just when you think peace has been restored, a duel breaks out. Not with swords. That would be dramatic. This one's about poetry. Apparently, one nobleman accused another of plagiarizing a line from a Tang Dynasty verse. The accused denies it. Voices rise, robes flutter. Fans snap shut with alarming sharpness. One of them shouts, "Your meter is uninspired," gasps. The other retorts, "Your metaphors are muddy." You think about hiding behind a parasol again. Luckily, the king intervenes with a single raised hand. The court falls silent. He simply says, "Then perhaps we should hear both versions." Oh no, the poets perform their dueling couplets. One compares love to drifting snow, the other to fermented pear juice. The king listens, nods, and then takes a sip of his actual pear juice. "I find mine less cloying," he says. A draw. Everyone claps politely. The poets bow with just enough grace to pretend they didn't both lose. You wander back to your mat, where someone has kindly left a small bowl of roasted chestnuts. You munch one slowly, watching a girl chase butterflies near the edge of the gathering. Her silk ribbons trail behind her like tiny comet tails. Nearby, a group of court ladies are now playing a guessing game involving folded paper fans and riddles about animals. One answer is mongoose. You're not sure what the riddle was, but it probably involved snakes and moral superiority. At the edge of the grounds, an artist is sketching the day's events with a brush so fine it looks like a single hair. You glance over his shoulder, cranes in flight, parasols against the sky, a nobleman dramatically fainting over spilled tea. Accurate. Someone drops a spoon. Someone else drops. From fatigue, a pageboy curls up on a mat and begins snoring with quiet dignity. No one wakes him. You breathe in citron smoke, roasted barley, river wind, and pine. You breathe out gossip, bug drama, poetry beef. The afternoon is winding down. The insect armies have retreated. The privies are, blessedly, no longer a topic of conversation, and the Queen Dowager is sipping a fresh cup of tea as if nothing ever happened, which, in royal circles, means everything went perfectly. The sunlight has softened now, leaning toward amber. Long shadows stretch across the picnic grounds like lounging cats, and everything feels just a little slower. Even the breeze seems to exhale instead of blow. This is the moment when the picnic begins to unwind, but not before packing up the royal way. You might think cleanup would be simple. A quick fold of the mats, stacking up boxes, and back to the palace, right? Oh no. This is the Joseon royal court. Packing up is its own miniature ceremony. It begins with a bell gantel, no more than a whisper of sound and, like magic, servants spring into motion. One team moves in to gather the soban tables. Each is wiped down with silk cloths infused with bamboo vinegar to remove any invisible sins or sticky residues. The cloths are burned afterward, not washed, burned. You're not entirely sure if it's for hygiene or spiritual cleansing, but you are very much here for the drama of it. Another group carefully repacks the lacquered food boxes. Leftovers are not tossed. They are catalogued down to the last sesame seed. Some are sent back to the palace kitchens to be reheated for supper. Others are delivered to honored court elders or distributed to temples, depending on the king's mood. You overhear a steward say, Box 23, Crown Princess Mucha consumed entirely. Box 24, unidentifiable sauce, half remaining. You hope you're never referred to in such terms. The parasols come down next, folded with reverent precision and wrapped in scented cloths. You're asked to carry one again, but this time you remember to switch hands halfway through. You're learning. Meanwhile, a minor drama unfolds over the missing silver spoon. Someone has misplaced the Queen's favorite rice spoon, a gift from the Prime Minister's wife, carved with cherry blossom engravings. Panic quietly ripples through the ranks. A kitchen boy is interrogated. A eunuch swears he saw it near the watermelon arrows. A full recheck of the picnic mats begins, inch by inch. Eventually, the spoon is found under the Queen's own sleeve. She chuckles, saying, "Even spoons seek shade." Everyone laughs, and a steward quietly sits down before he faints from relief. The folding screens are disassembled next. Each one is rolled inside a bamboo tube lined with silk, labeled with red ink, and assigned a guard. You're not sure why. Maybe folding screens are prone to betrayal. As this slow choreography continues, the musicians strike up a final tune, something light, something nostalgic. A few children begin spinning in slow circles, arms out like willow branches. The youngest trips and falls on his robe. He begins to cry until the crown prince offers him a preserved chestnut. Instant peace. You notice the calligrapher from earlier, crouched near the picnic edge, now sketching the final scene. Nobles lit by lantern glow, servants folding parasols, a young poet napping against a tray cart. His brush dances like wind through tall grass. You envy that calm. Then someone lights the first lantern. It's small, hanging from a curved bamboo pole, with sides made of mulberry paper, painted in soft hues, waves, cranes, pine trees. Its flame flickers to life, a trembling star in the twilight. Then another lantern is lit, and another. Soon, the picnic grounds are a garden of suspended light. This is the midnight walker. Soft return to the palace, under a trail of floating fireflies made by hand. You're handed a lantern of your own. It's heavier than it looks, and the handle squeaks slightly. Still, when you lift it up, the glow spills across your robe, turning its blue silk to sea glass green. You smile, silently. The procession reforms. The king and queen begin walking, slowly, side by side, their lanterns held aloft by attendants. Behind them, nobles in pairs, servants in soft lines, children asleep in cradles strapped to backs. It is eerily quiet. No drums, no flute, just the crunch of grass under slip feet and the low rustle of robes. And above you, the moon rises, full round, luminous. It seems to nod at the day's effort. The river reflects it like a second sky, and you find yourself staring, breath caught. As your lantern swings gently beside you, you pass through a grove of young pines, their needles whispering like gossip. too tired to continue. A fox barks in the distance, maybe just to remind you this isn't a dream. A few petals from a late blossoming tree drift down and stick to your sleeve. You don't brush them off. The palace gates reappear, dark and wide, waiting to swallow the procession whole. A final flute note sounds thin, as errand the court passes beneath the carved wood arch. The lanterns one by one dipping out of view. You glance back once. The riverbank is empty now, save for the shimmering afterglow of candles and memories. One long, magical day, packed up like a picnic box. The palace greets your return, not with fanfare, but with quiet. Heavy wooden gates swing shut behind the final lantern, and the wide stone courtyard swallows the sound of footsteps, like a lake taking raindrops. Even the geese in the inner gardens seem to sense it, the hush that follows something sacred. You've been outside all day, but stepping back inside these walls feels like crawling into the chest of something ancient and alive. No more parasols, no more hovering bees. Just moonlight slick on tiled rooftops and the soft brush of silk against stone. You trail behind the nobles as they disperse, some to the women's quarters, others to their writing rooms or baths. The crown prince pauses at the base of the stairway, removes his shoes with great ceremony, and mutters, "So many poems, and still no metaphor for cold noodles." A steward nods, making a mental note to commission one. The Queen Dowager is carried off in a palanquin too small for dignity, but she doesn't seem to mind. You hear her chuckling about the bee again. At least it didn't aim for the king's ear. A fair point. As for the king, he vanishes behind folding screens, his robe trailing like mist. His guards follow, silent as shadows. You don't envy them. They still have to report on the number of preserved jujubes consumed. Down to the last quarter bite, your own path leads you to the servants' quarters behind the western pavilion. A modest room, simple but warm, with heated floors and a shelf of mismatched ceramic bowls. On the mat, your earlier apple waits for you, slightly bruised, deeply appreciated. You eat it in 3 thoughtful bites. Before long, the night shift begins trickling in. One maid returns, carrying a bundle of half-washed napkins, grumbling about pine nut stains. Another collapses onto her mat, muttering, "At least no one fainted this time." You're tempted to correct her. There was that court poet who tripped on his sleeve and lay dramatically still for 10 minutes, but you let it go. You're tired, but not done. Before bed, there are still final tasks to complete. You help untie ribbon seals from the returned lacquer boxes, your fingers sticky with old syrup and ceremonial obligation. Each item must be wiped, recorded, then stored in its appropriate spot within a storeroom, so labyrinthine it might house a minotaur with a tea obsession. One eunuch older, soft-spoken, leans in to show you how to fold the queen's napkin without creasing the embroidery. His hands move like water. You try. Your folds look like origami, made by someone in a hurry during an earthquake. He says nothing but hands you another napkin. Across the corridor, someone is softly playing plucking out a lullaby that's older than the palace itself. Its low, plummy notes seem to smooth the air itself. You pause, letting it soak into your ribs, and realize this sound is a signal. Not of ending, but of coiling back inward, like silk thread winding into its spool. Outside, a boy carries spent lanterns to the ash pit, each one crumpled and soot. The flames that guided you home, now reduced to soft, black ghosts. One slips from his basket and rolls toward you. You pick it up carefully, inspecting the faded painting on its paper skin, 2 cranes flying above a pine tree. The ink has run, in places, blurred by condensation and time. You tuck it into your sleeve, a souvenir. The bathhouse is still steaming. You slip in with 2 others, sharing silence and warm water that smells faintly of ginseng and old bamboo. Your limbs ache. Your shoulders have a faint red mark from parasol duty, and someone accidentally drops a soap root near your foot. You pretend not to mind. Later, Dried and re-robed, you return to your room. The floor mat is hot and inviting, heated from below by brick flues that snake like quiet serpents through the palace foundation. You roll out your pillow-woven straw stuffed with pine needles and lie down slowly, every joint singing a sleepy aria. On a shelf nearby, someone has placed a folded note, a menu for tomorrow's breakfast: millet porridge, kimchi, and sweet pumpkin slices. A whisper of continuity after a day of grand performance. You close your eyes. Your robe rustles softly as you shift, and the scent of river wind and citron smoke still clings faintly to your sleeves. Somewhere in the courtyard, a night bird chirps. The sound is small, perfect. The palace breathes around you, settling, and so do you. It's sometime past midnight now. The palace is no longer awake, but not quite asleep either. It hums with that gentle, ancient stillness only buildings older than memory can produce. You lie there on your warm floor mat, staring at the faint flicker of moonlight seeping through the paper windows. The day is over. The food has been cleared. The noble gossip stored for later retelling, and your feet, possibly plotting rebellion. Somewhere down the corridor, a servant shifts in their sleep, mumbling about a spilled soup bowl. From another room, a faint thud, the sound of a hairpin rolling off a low table. You've memorized every creak in this place, every wooden groan of age, every whisper of wind brushing against the tiled eaves. But tonight it all feels a little softer. Your fingers still remember the texture of the parasol handle, the way the polished cedar warmed in your palm as the sun climbed above the palace. You think of the food, the sharp vinegar temps of jellyfish salad, the silky sweetness of chestnut rice cake, of the unspoken tension when the queen dowager sneezed, and the quiet laughter that followed, and of the lantern light stretching across the path home, your own breath visible in the chill. It wasn't just a meal under a tree, it was a performance, a ballet of centuries-old etiquette, whispered alliances, and edible art. Every gesture had weight. Every bite had rank. Every spilled sauce could have been a diplomatic incident. Historians often focus on battles, kings, reforms, rebellions, but not enough on this. A royal family at rest, a palace in full bloom, a single day where Pao dressed itself in silk and laughter and shared melon slices beneath the sky. You sit up slowly, reaching into your sleeve for the crumpled lantern you saved. The paper is more fragile now, slightly torn, but the cranes are still there, one wing crooked, the other mid-beat. You set it beside your mat, a nightlight for no one but you. And then just before sleep can claim you, you hear it. A bell, soft, far away, 3 notes only, not a summons, not an emergency, just the night bell, rung by the monk who walks the palace paths in silence, reminding even kings and servants that the world is turning, that dawn always returns. You lie back again. This time, you let the weight of the day press into the floor beneath you. The memory of every color, every scent, every misfired kite folds itself into your bones, and you begin to drift. The room is warm, the air is still. Outside, the moon glides gently westward, silvering the palace rooftops with soft light. The wind has quieted, the last candle has long gone out, and every echo from the picnic now lingers only as a whisper tucked inside memory. You breathe in slowly. Let the scent of old wood, faint smoke, and crushed pine needles wash through you. There's no need to move anymore. No more parasols to carry. No noble trays to balance. The royal picnic has ended, not with applause, but with sighs and silence and the soft rustle of robes folded into drawers. Imagine the silk cool beneath your fingers, the faint hum of a night flute drifting from a guard who plays when no one's looking. The glow of lanterns gone now, replaced only by stillness and sleep. The floor beneath you radiates comfort, a low warmth seeping through your robe, grounding you. You're safe. You're full, not just in body, but in spirit, soothed by music, nourished by ritual, held in the gentle breath of a palace older than sorrow. You'll wake tomorrow with the sunrise. You'll stretch, drink warm barley tea, and maybe laugh about that bee again. But for now, this moment is yours. Let the quiet wrap around you like a silk shawl. Let the rhythm of your breathing match the rhythm of centuries, and let your thoughts, like the cranes on your lantern, finally come to rest. You've done enough sleep. Now you are home.